Good evening and welcome back to Bearwood West Yard. Tonight I'm going to be giving you a bit of an insight as to everything that's been going on recently, mainly because most things have changed in my life over the last couple of months. Now this won't impact the layout too badly, but I just thought I'd do a little bit of an update as I've been a bit quiet and we're now into March. So first off, I'm going to begin with the layout, then I'm going to talk about the workbench, and then I'm going to go on to my other side projects. But anyway, starting with the layout, really I've done absolutely minimal effort on the layout recently, and that's mainly because of how busy I've been in my personal life. So the bits that I have done is I've redone the headland. In the previous video, you'll have seen that the area directly in the middle of the screen, that was a massive sandbank, and that was all done in preparation for creating the multiple sand pits that go around. Now that's exactly how it looks in prototype on Camford Heath, which is just 10 minutes down the road from me. And that's exactly how I'd hoped for it to look. In terms of the heathy shades, it's near enough spot on, just needs a bit of green on it, as I went up there recently, as it was quite nice the other night actually, and I'd forgotten to add in some of the green tones. Shows how long it's been since I last went up there really, I guess. Anyway, other than that, I've done a bit down in the cess by the class 70. If I just pull that out of the way, I don't have power on at the minute, as my controller has been disconnected, as there's been a lot of tidying going on. But either way, so if I turn the lights up a bit, I should be able to see that I've gone over the cess with some plants. And that's so all I've literally done is I've added some WWS scenics, spring and summer static grasses in lengths of 2 and 4 millimeters, and then I've just added some woodland scenics, medium green scatter. It's all the fine stuff that you want, and that kind of shows like the little bits of thistle and that come out in your very low lying ground plants, etc. And then I've also added in some soil, some fine turf soil in there as well, just to darken it up and make it look as if that some patches are wetter than others, as wet grass tends to be darker in colour than dry grass. So I thought I'd add that in to show where there's more vegetation growth. Other than that scenery, I've been working on the bridge. Now these bricks have taken a long time and I haven't touched them since mid-January. So you can kind of see now I've been gone for at least 6 weeks, nearly 7 or thereabouts. And there's going to be a lot more time that I'm going to need to devote, which I haven't quite got yet. So I'm hoping that within the next 2 to 3 months I should hopefully have the bricks on the outside, if not on the underside of the arch, over to somewhere around the end of the arch, hopefully. But that all depends on if everything goes to plan or not. Right back in January, I'd set out a plan to have this whole area here all scenic and with maybe even some fencing gone in by April, and this has really not happened. As much as I've got another couple of weeks until April hits, I'm definitely well off target, and that's because of everything in my personal life. Now that's not all bad stuff, but all that's pretty much happened is I've changed trades at work, so my apprenticeship has pretty much restarted, and because of COVID and lockdowns, the course that I was doing, which is an intensive machinist's course, that I had to do 6 weeks of block release. And although that was all theory and virtual, as opposed to being in the workshop at college and getting on the milling machines and the lathes, I just really was struggling with the amount of tasks I was being set. I had about 4 lessons a day. Each I'd get about 8 pieces of work a day, and to stop it all piling up and that, I'd be spending my weekends doing it, my evenings, every spare moment I had, until I pretty much couldn't do it anymore, till my eyes hurt. I pretty much just put in that effort. So 6 weeks of that, and that was only temporary. I can work on the layout any other times. The workbench, however, I've been a little bit more productive on that, not too much though, which I'll get on. So the thing that I've actually been quite excited about and that I want to show you is in this box here. Now, I came across this about 4 weeks ago while I was on a break from college, and I could not believe my eyes when I found it on the internet. Now, I found this on an American version of RM Web, as in the States, where they've got such large houses, they can have welded rail trains, etc., as they have main manufacturers that make the wagons. So I only went and bought God knows how many feet of plastic styrene rail. Now, this is the equivalent of Code 80, and it's made by Protoloads in North Carolina. Massive thanks to David Ward, who sells these, and his service is excellent. Now, he sells them, I've got 15 sticks here, so each stick is 17 foot in length, but he does a minimum order of 5, and it's pretty good value for money, to be honest. He sells them at 5 sticks for $75, which in the UK is the equivalent of about 60 to 65 pounds. So, but yeah, so these will sit in the box until the day that I call the welded rail train project done, and in which it'll be the first UK welded rail train to feature on YouTube, though I've already featured it once. It'll be the first complete, at least, second generation welded rail train by Cowan Sheldon. So speaking of that, and the rail in action, there was a bit that did snap off when I was rolling it up. I'll get back into focus. So I've had a little play with this actually, just setting it up, and with the chute wagon I decided that although I don't have the cess or forefoot manipulator cylinder bits that direct where the track's going to go, the rail's going to go even, I did however put up a picture on British Railway Modelling on Facebook of the rail going into the forefoot position from out of the chute. Now, I got quite a few likes on this, needless to say it's the only one in existence, so I was pretty pleased with that when I saw it. And one of the other workbench bits that I have been working on also is the manipulator wagon. Now, I've spent a fair few hours on this, as mainly when I gave up with college work and I just needed to relax or de-stress, I just thought what a better way than by cutting up some strip or some sheet. So refocus. So all I've gone and done, focus is being a nightmare tonight, so all I've really gone and done is just put some sheet over the strip. This end is the chute end, so I've made the ladders That's terribly out of focus, so I'm just going to put it down. So I've made the ladders, which I will fit last because all this will need to be painted. This is actually quite a difficult build because it's the wagon that I have the least photographs of, and that I can find minimal photos of online. So although for the shoot wagon 979507, I was able to find several photos of this one, the opposite side of it, because the side that you're viewing now is the side that I managed to get plenty of photos of. But unfortunately for the manipulator, there are very few photos of this wagon or any of its mechanical rail drivers out there. So I'm going to have to wait until lockdown's finished, and then I can eventually go up to Eastleigh on a couple of days out, and I can see if one of these pops up and I'm able to get a few pictures. So it's a waiting game with that wagon, but hopefully it won't be too long. All that rail in the background I'm going to need to scrap. That does sound a bit of a waste considering that there is a shortage of Pico track, but that is all code 75. I bought that initially because where I was going to make my own tooling to make some styrene or even rubber rails, I needed to make some moulds to be able to cast some rubber ones. So those are no longer needed now. So those are surplus to requirements, but I'm sure I'll be able to find other uses for them. The other thing that's been on the workbench recently are these Cambrian salmon wagons. I now have 5 of these in total, all at this stage, currently awaiting some paint. Now, I've got to wait for the better weather to come along for that, unfortunately, as I don't have the paint, as it's quite typical that the weather's been nice recently, the paint's not yet turned up, and the weather's looking bleak for the next week or so. But either way, I got these from Eileen's Emporium in Gloucester. I waited about 5 weeks to get these, mainly because of the whole flangeway fiasco. For those who don't know, and just to say that this isn't a slanderous comment or anything, what happened is Flangeway, who made the Network Rail snowplows, they effectively made some salmons as a ready-to-run model. However, they may have been taken in by their CADs or not checked any of the samples that had come back, the engineering samples that being, because when people were receiving them, they put them up against their own Cambrian salmons or a ruler, and in fact they were found to be no more than an oversized BDA. So rather embarrassing on their part, and they've still not replied or made any public statements on RM Web. So I got caught up in that, and I ended up waiting 5 weeks because the amount of people that had turned to kit building because the ready-to-run model was unreliable, or unprototypical, I should probably say. So yeah, that's about that really. Just waiting for a coat of paint, and then I will turn these into ospreys. I forgot to mention also, as I mentioned about ospreys, that my delivery from my local laser cutting studio, that has all arrived. So I've now got the pattern boxes for the MXAs. So I have also conducted some tests with those. I've made several patterns, and I've had to experiment with various resins because I was getting incomplete casts. So I had to push those aside for the time being because of college, but hopefully I should be able to get back to that within the next couple of weeks. But regarding the ospreys, so the osprey stanchions that I had sent off as CADs, I've now had samples back. Now, from a selling point of view, I don't think it's going to be feasible, unfortunately, but from a modeller's perspective, or from my perspective at least, these have come out incredibly well, and I'm quite proud of them actually, considering that there's various intricate parts. There's only so close I can get with my phone camera, but yeah, that's the middle one. And then the end, now this is incredibly fragile. I am making these, as you can see the size difference. These actually come in two parts, so when I had to draw the CAD, there was no way on earth that I was going to be able to make one as a complete piece. So I had to make the top on its own, and then I've now made the trusses. It's actually amazing how difficult it is to draw I-beam on AutoCAD and the amount of commands you have to put in. I spent about 2 hours just trying to actually make the initial I-beam before even trying to do any of the complex parts such as the angles and getting the dimensions for it all and stretching it. So a lot of time and effort does go into CAD. I know some people can think, oh yeah, it's just easy and you can do it in 5 minutes. No, that's not the case. I've got an MVQ and I can tell you that it's not the case at all. But either way, those came out quite nicely, and for these I am making silicone moulds, so I will try and resin cast some. So if I can sell some, as I know that there's many people who want ospreys but don't know where to get the stanchions from, or don't feel as if they're capable scratch building them, then I'll see if I can make some moulds, and if they're reliable and they make good quality parts, then I will see if I can sort some people out with some. But if not, and the quality will be very thorough, if I wouldn't put them on my models, I won't sell them. Let's put it like that. But regarding the MXAs, on the left is my master pattern, and on the right is my only half decent resin cast of it. So the main difficulties that I've been having with these rather large and complex castings is the fact that air bubbles do come into it. I've had to modify the silicone moulds to be able to cope with the air. This does mean that I do have to mix more resin, but that's not the main issue. I do have air bubbles in some corners, so you'll probably, I don't know if you can see, but there are several spots where I have had to fill them with Vallejo plastic putty. Now, I shouldn't have to do this, but unfortunately, where the resin that I was using was what I had at the time, so this was some I think it was like 3.5 minute polyurethane resin, so it's got a pot life of 3.5 minutes, which after making about 5 of these, or attempting to, I realised was not a good choice, so I'd have to invest in some better resin. So I've done just that, and I've probably got some 2 longer life stuff, typically, which has got a pot life of about 15 minutes, but that'll ensure that there's 0 air bubbles and what I'm producing is nothing but quality. So hopefully I will be demoulding some of these at a lesser speed than what I would like to be. However, I'd rather sacrifice making more for quality, because you can't get enough of quality control these days. So hopefully these will come out quite nicely. That's all for the workbench side of things, so we will move on to the side projects that go around the layout. As viewers who watched the previous layout update will be aware, I installed 3 tiers of floating shelves I think it was in the summer actually that I did this. Now it's starting to show its age, it's starting to bow a little bit, and at the time I didn't really know too much about putting up shelves, so I thought, right, that'll do, because that's what we have around the house. Anyway, as time goes on, you become a bit wiser and you start to realise that maybe that's not such a feasible choice. So I'm now learning from that experience, and also with the amount of stock that I've got, I've actually brought down the BRA steel carriers and the mega frats down from the loft. As I had the space, I thought, well, I might as well bring him down, give him a bit of a run and some more TLC, rather than being stuck up in a loft for the last 2 years. So with that, I then found that I have no space for any of my other rolling stock, or that I would like to purchase in the future, as there are plenty of bits of rolling stock, such as the Revolution JNA wagons, as although these have been around for quite a while now, probably at least a year and a half, I've gone off of them, not mainly because of price, although that was part of it, at £210 for 4 wagons. Also, where I was going to store them, I had to keep that in mind as well, because I didn't want to be one of those people who bought it, never run it, and ends up selling it and making a loss. So in the end, what I've come to the conclusion of doing is I've gone and bought a load of proper shelf brackets, and this time from Screwfix, so I know they're going to be good quality, trade rated, 110 kilo, no problem, rather than these quite puny 10 kilo max SWL. So hopefully I should be able to store my MRA wagons on there rather than on the pull-out board under the bed, which is primarily for locomotives and units. So I might even be able to store part of the welded rail train on there, as those wagons are pretty heavy. So hopefully I will have a lot more room. I'm planning on having 2 tiers actually, so rather than just having this one tier and then a load of old pictures, I'm gonna have another tier down below. I've already got the wall plugs and the brackets. All I'm waiting on at the minute is to buy the sheet material. I'm thinking of going for 12mm plywood, as that's what I built the layout baseboard tops off of. However, if 18mm plywood would be better, then I might opt for that. I'll leave that one for the comment section, but I'm probably going to stick with 12, mainly because of a weight issue as well, as I know 18 is quite heavy. So with that in mind, I should be able to have 2 rows or 2 levels of sidings and for stock that is approximately the same length, so about 8 foot or so. So that will be really nice, really comfortable, and I won't have to do what I'm doing at the minute and just storing stock down on the layout, because there's nowhere else for it to go. So that should hopefully make the layout a bit more flexible and the yard not as jam-packed and action-filled as what a rural yard necessarily may be. Although it won't necessarily be of interest to many people, I also did recently pick up a paperback book of Rails to Full Harbour by my good friend Colin Stone. This is actually a really informative book, and it goes back quite a while. The history in it and the documentation is just priceless. So if you are modelling anywhere around Poole, whether it be Broadstone, Hamworthy, or even Bournemouth, then it's something great to have, and it documents everything on to run around the railways in Poole and on the southwestern main line, at least between Brockenhurst and Wareham, between the late 50s and the early 2000s. So a lot of what I'm going to be running on the layout is based primarily on what's in this book and on a what if scenario that it all continued. So I've even learned a few things myself when I first read the book. I've had this for a couple of weeks now, and I have to say that although some people don't like it, it's great. It's one of the best resources I think you can find. And I know a lot of people are quick to not necessarily buy books anymore, but some of the best information and the most hard to find information can sometimes be right there in front of you. It's just a case of whether you want to go and get it or not. So I'm going to leave it at that. Just to also say that none of the products or books or anything that I've put in this video today has been paid promotion, as it may come across like that. It's all just, I want to help people to get good at modelling, as well as also help myself, as we're all one big community, and I don't want to be like, oh yeah, I've got this, you've got that, etc. So we're all one big community, one big family, and especially in lockdowns it can get quite tough. I found that being home for 6 weeks near enough. So yeah, so I hope everyone's staying well, and stay tuned for the next instalment from Bearwood West Yard. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.